So that new Mulaney special dropped on Netflix, huh?
Yeah, just watched it.
Yeah, me too. I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. I was kind of shocked. Like the second it came out, it's that cold open, I think is new to me. I don't have you seen any comedians do that cold open?
When it just starts like cold on stage like that. I've seen a couple of them. I like that. I like that style because it's getting a little tired with like they're in the green room and they're doing some push-ups and it's
Right.
like I like when they just sort of get right to it or do something or do like a sketch or something that's scripted beforehand. But it was worth the rehab wait for sure.
Yeah. Dude, cold open, and then he starts talking about like darker material, and I'm like, oh, this is different. Like I was confused. I didn't know if it was the right special. I didn't know if it was John Mulaney. It was weird, man.
You know you're the master of the craft when you can open on which grandparent to kill as you're opening. It's like Carlin did that when he opened with the abortion joke in that famous special
Oh
back in
yeah.
the day. And it just shows like you already like me. The whole thing about stand-up is it's like you have to ease into tough material. And when you're already eight specials deep or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
No, the grandparent bit opening was fantastic. I love the closer with the GQ article. I think the thing that surprised me about that is just that the reporter just seems to think that he's like bombing or that Mulaney doesn't really care about the answers or something. It's funny that he's not questioning what's going on right now and just sort of
Exactly.
writing down what he says and it like is nonsensical.
I had to watch it again last night just for this video because the first time I watched it, the second he said he like had a drug abuse problem and like was in rehab, it was like that Vietnam scene where like it's like your ears are ringing and you see helicopters going by and whatnot. I couldn't focus, so I feel like I missed some of the jokes. Like he's the last person you would think would be on any sort of drugs.
I know. I mean, he used to talk about how he started drinking early in his life and other sort of specials, but I think that it was surprising that it was such a long-term thing, but kudos to him to just come out and address it. I mean, sometimes you see these comedians have specials where they come out of some personal thing that's pretty difficult and they just don't even mention it. And the whole time
Right.
it's the opposite. The whole time you're watching, you're like, but you did this crazy thing. And why aren't you, why don't you have jokes about it? So I thought it was great that he just leaned right into it.
Yeah, he definitely started early. I looked it up, and according to him and another source, I mean, him's enough. But he started drinking in 2000. Okay, no, he started drinking at 13, and then he sobered up in 2005. And by my math, that makes him 22 or 23. So he started drinking before anyone starts drinking, and he had to sober up when people start drinking.
Yeah, and I have friends like that. People we grew up with are like that. It's like the tortoise and the
Yeah.
hare. They start real early, and then we're able to have a couple drinks in our 30s, and they're like 12 years deep into the program.
Dude, they shall remain nameless, but yeah, a couple friends that we have look very old now from that lifestyle.
Oh yeah. Because when they were 12, they were 30.
Exactly. And dude, apparently he was in rehab for 60 days total. Um, I didn't know this, but you have to do rehab for each drug. So he had a very long list of drugs he was doing. So like just for benzos, he had to go for about a week and detox. Just for alcohol, he had to so each one has its own rehab, which I didn't know. So it took a very long time.
Oh, weird. But you're detoxing from everything right away, right? They're not give or are they giving him like micro doses of benzos and stuff?
I don't know how that works either. Cause like, yeah, if you started detoxing for benzos and that's a week, does that mean you were doing cocaine for a
Yeah.
week? Like that same week? I don't think it's weird, man.
It would be funny if they structured it like a set list for comedy. He's like, okay, I'm going to open with the benzo detox. I'm going to close with the cocaine detox.
Man, yeah, he describes one of them. I think it was Benzos as like his skin felt like it was peeling off, like it was just full body pain. And cocaine was apparently one of the easier ones to come off of as far as like detox and rehab.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he did. I mean, that guy's a national treasure, so we need to keep him healthy and funny.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably always funny, but we need to keep him healthy so he can be funny forever.
Right. Yeah. So he can not die, which
Yeah.
is kind of
It's
important.
I mean, I thought it was interesting that he really just focused on that. I mean, there's so much in his personal life that he doesn't, and I can see why he doesn't talk about that stuff in the special, but that was one of the questions too, is, his life did a complete 180 during this whole experience and all the way it's not just drugs. And it was interesting that he didn't really get into some of the, sort of personal life stuff, but I can see how he would maybe want to protect people on that.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned he got married and has kids with like a new person. So
Yeah, he got divorced and had a kid. I don't even know if he got remarried. I just know he got divorced and had a baby.
good catch. Yeah, he might have a kid without being married, but yeah, I didn't mention that. Apparently, even though he only talked about the drugs, really, it was his longest special that he's had.
Interesting. Yeah, what was it, hour and 20 or something like that? I was surprised by that.
Yeah, yeah, something somewhere in there.
It is so hard to film an hour and 20 minutes, even when it's your first special. So that's just rehab boring. That's the headline for that. Yeah. Sat around writing jokes all day.
Dude, do you think? I mean, he had to be thinking of like, oh, this is another 5 minutes. This is another 10 minutes. Like everything in rehab.
For sure. And I think, sort of like that Tig Notaro special when she had just got
Cancer.
diagnosed with cancer. Sometimes some of those bits just write themselves because it's such like a intense thing you're going through that all you do is think about it.
Yeah. In his special, the latest special, he was wearing that overcoat and sitting on Seth's couch, and they were doing like an interview. I watched a bunch of because it's in clips, so I watched like 3 or 4 of the clips with him in that overcoat. He kind of killed for some like a good portion of it. It wasn't like off the rails crazy. So he found some balance.
For sure. Yeah, no, he's a high functioning guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like him using drugs was as shocking as if we found out Pete Davidson didn't take drugs. Like it was the equal level of shock.
Yeah, I remember being very shocked when it was in the news when he first went to rehab because it seemed like, to your point earlier, it seemed like it was something he had overcome very early in life. So, but that, I mean, I have friends that have been sober a long time and they always say the same thing is that, your addiction is doing push-ups while you're staying sober, like ready to come back. So in his case, his addiction was ready for prime time.
Dude, I had no idea until the special. You saw it on the news or?
Um, I just remember seeing it in the news that I think he made a statement and, he was pretty honest and upfront about going to rehab for cocaine. I mean, when you go to SNL, when you're no longer on the show and asked to have a haircut at 7 o'clock at night, I'm pretty sure you can't keep the secret of what's going on.
Oh man. Yeah, to play devil's advocate, since I'm in the tech sector, like I've had jobs that just feed you buffets all day long and you can go in. I would actually go in when I was not working, eat dinner, and then leave. Like if I
For
kind of
sure.
related on that level, but yeah, just for a haircut.
Yeah, totally. I get that. If I was on SNL, I'd use the bathroom if I was in Midtown or something. But I think that the thing also is that there were 12 people at his intervention. That is a lot of people that were worried and available. Like I've been at one intervention before for somebody. I think it was 4 of us,
Oh,
and
well,
2 of us were roommates or something with the person. So like,
that counts as one.
yeah, but that was, to have that many people know about what's going on and show up means that he was just having problems probably everywhere. And, you know.
Yeah, and it's his bit about comedians there not making jokes, how awkward that is. It's like all the top comedians in the country not making jokes.
That was such a brilliant bit. I mean, that's what I'm talking about with the special, that he just mines the most specific. I mean, that's what great comedians do. They find stuff that no one else is going to have that angle that he has there, and he always finds the stuff that's very specific to his life and interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole tonal change, um, like that's going to be the new Mulaney. Like I don't think he can go back to like the.
Oh, I know. Which is kind of too bad, because that's what I always admired the most, is his performance ability on top of like the amazing writing that he always delivers. So I don't know. I mean, I think he has that in him, drugs aside. He sort of tried to say
Right.
that it was, I mean, I think that was just kind of a funny joke of, why do you think I was so crazy? But I think he'll have some physicality after this too. But we'll see.
Do you think comedians grow out of that? Like, there's only so much physicality you can have when you're like 70, but there's a lot of in between. So is that something comedians grow out of?
I think it depends on who it is. I mean, I'm always trying as a comedian to deepen that kind of stuff, because if you can really sell a joke with those other dimensions, it hits harder, in my opinion, as long as you're not distracting from it, like doing cartwheels or whatever. But I think that a lot of it's just life. It's like when you play a sport, it's like you play pickup basketball and then you blow out your knee and you're like, well, I'm not going to play pickup basketball anymore. I'm sure there's certain things for comedians, like, I'm not going to pace the stage as much because my shin splints are acting up, more so than changing that because of that. I think it's more conceptual. Comedians will sometimes go into different phases where they'll maybe talk about, different areas of their life. Like you see Seinfeld being a little more personal in his last special, when he
Right.
used to talk more about just, kind of really just abstract observations. So I think it's more of that. It's more the subject matter than the physicality.
Yeah, that's a good point. Carlin was talking about death when he was closer to death. Like a lot of his, I don't know, the last couple specials were just so dark, but it was perfect because that was true to him.
Totally. And the best way to have new material is to just look at it through the lens of whatever stage you are in your life. So that was what he was grappling with. He wasn't, 20 and single anymore or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering how I was so shocked. And I watched the 2018 special for Mulaney, and he mentions drugs way more than I thought. Like he talks about being coked out during college graduation, and he gave some random example of like, now imagine if you had a duffel bag of cocaine. Let's say it was fake cocaine, which I think he said just for legal reasons. I don't know, but
Yeah.
he mentioned drugs a good amount, and I was like, oh, I was just blind to the whole thing.
Yeah, and when you're a high functioning person, you can do that stuff and still be productive and find ways to hide it. And then it just gets to a point where it starts being obvious, which he makes clear with when the intervention happens. But those are slow moving train wrecks
Yeah,
over a course of years and years and years for some people.
yeah. I watched a Theo Von interview with him, and Theo Von did cocaine and a couple other drugs. But I think John Mulaney had him beat with the list of drugs he had. And it made me feel like a complete square when he's shouting out drugs I've never heard of. Like, I don't know what Z bar is, but that was apparently in his list.
Man, I thought that was a deli.
There's Clonopin, which I thought old people used for some reason.
Yeah.
A bunch of other types of speed, but yeah, he mentioned in there that he realized that he was good at comedy in spite of drugs and not because of drugs, and that was like
Mhm.
the big breakthroughs.
For sure. And that's why I think he'll be able to do fun physical stuff, because that's the kind of comic he is. And the drugs were just a part of his life at the time.
Right. And to your point before, he was also saying how, so he did the longest special, he covered all the drug stuff, and he feels like, oh, I don't have any more comedy. But it's more of like just a deep inner fear, not a real thing. I'm sure he has lots more bits, but he has that fear of like, oh, I ran out. Like, this is it.
For sure. That's always a fear, is that you're not going to ever come up with anything ever again. And
You've
just go to
exhausted all
rehab.
the
It all
fun.
changes.
Yeah. It's crazy how, like in the overcoat and other stuff, it's crazy how like comedians can hide a lot of those things because you can write it off as like comedy. So it makes you wonder how many other comedians you might be missing, or not necessarily drugs, but it could be depression or anything else.
For sure. And that's the problem with comedy, is you have to sort of put on this character and facade, and you get really good at just putting yourself in that place, even just in harmless ways. Like, I feel like I'm more subdued and low key just in regular conversation, but I know that when I get on stage, I have to bring like positive energy and be more friendly and likable and all the things, because it just does well. The jokes do better that way. So I think there are a lot of people that, actors are like that too. It's that they're able to just play a role of someone whose life is good,
Mm,
and then shut it off as soon as they get off the stage.
right. Yeah.
A lot of them are screwed up people too, bad childhoods, like tragic things
Right.
happening. I mean, look at Stephen Colbert. He like lost many family members in a plane crash when he was a kid. I mean, there's
Oh,
comedy is born a lot of times from, just making lemonade out of lemons, but it's hard to get over the trauma.
tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if someone like Andy Kaufman, like if he went to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, if they diagnosed him with like multiple personalities, would we ever even know, or would it even change his career? Because it's his bit.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard to know if that guy was actually committing to it or if he really was kind of wired in that way, and we'll never know.
Yeah.
But you talk to people that knew him, and he would be those characters, and he would not break. It was his method acting, but he wasn't doing it for a movie that was shooting. He just do it for life.
Yeah.
He was method living.
Yeah. Not a comedian, but there was that mafia guy who walked around and pretended he was crazy, and he would like pee on himself and scream, um and so someone was asked like, do you think he was really crazy? And then the guy was like, to do that for 20 years, I think you have to be crazy, even if you started out pretending.
100%. I'd rather not be in the, just not be in the mob and not pee on myself if I were him. It's like, is it really worth the money and the power that he generated to, you know, then have to just be this crazy person in the neighborhood that do laundry all the time, in addition to evade the feds.
uh, I think it worked though. So
Yeah, well, I guess he found the trick. Be wary of
yeah,
being on themselves in public, even if it's at a frat party. They could be in the mob. Call the
yeah,
cops. So should we rate the special? Should we rate Baby J?
yeah. I'm gonna give it 4 Z bars, which converts roughly to 16 J bars and shout out to his Baby J special.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I would give it 83 coked up SNL haircuts on the
Wow.
scale. Very strong special.
Wow.